Go ahead, Peter.
No, no, no. Well, okay, God, yeah. Sorry, they're letting me talk finally. I didn't really say very much in this episode. It was kind of fun to listen to Mike and John talk about working from home and surveillance. What was it? Watching from home, I think was the acronym. The clever wordplay. There was an article in some publication which was not mentioned. Forget who it was. But it's all about how our employers are looking at what we're doing, how many emails we're sending. Mike's got some views, John's got some views, and they don't argue as much as I would have liked, but enough to kind of keep me happy for a while. So check it out.
I was a little surprised by that myself.
Yeah. Subscribe, join Discord, and then watch the episode.
Are you ready, John?
Hello.
I don't know.
What's making you angry today?
I'm running out of steam.
Running out of steam. I'll bring you back. I'll energize you.
Oh, jeez.
All right. Work from home, watched from home, Office 365, and workplace surveillance creep. I'll just read the first paragraph.
That's a good play on words, though, isn't it?
It is.
I know. I like it. Watched from home. It's good. Imagine your performance at work was assessed directly from the amount of emails sent and the amount of time consumed editing a document, or the time spent in meetings, or even moving your mouse. This may sound ludicrous, but your boss might be doing exactly that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, this is like a bad version of Marshall Brain's Mana. If you haven't read Mana, I think it's called A Tale of Two Futures. I don't remember. Yeah. Super good book. Covers basically this. And what our capitalist future holds.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mike, but as an aside, if you want us to hear, a recommendation for Mana literally daily, do subscribe, because we bring it up a fair amount. It's a good book, but
he means me.
Yeah,
maybe but it's worth it for other things. Sorry, Mike, carry on.
I'm just going to read the stats and then we're going to fight about it. Coming out of the pandemic, the demand for employee monitoring tools is soared. In 2020, global demand for employee monitoring software increased 108% by April and 70% by May compared to pre-pandemic times. The search engine queries for how to monitor employees working from home increased 1,705% in April.
Yeah.
And another 652% in May of 2020 compared to the previous year.
Okay.
So imagine you're a boss. You're a boss of a small company, whatever.
Sorry, incidentally, this article was from June of 2022.
Okay.
So we're once again late to the party, but
we're late to the party, but it's still happening.
Yes.
You're company owner, you're a business owner, you have 10 employees. It's a digital company. So you work on computers, but everyone comes into the office. March 2020 hits, and oh shit, everyone, you have to now work from home. You're sort of a boomer. You're maybe 50, 55. You've never worked from home. Work from home has never even existed in your sphere of thought. And now you're forced to do this basically overnight. Where you once was able to verify that your workers are working by looking over and seeing them working, you now have no visibility. This is the result. You don't know how to measure performance outside of butts on chairs, at your desk at 8, working. You don't know how to measure productivity. You don't know how to measure output. So you default to, well, I better look at how many fucking emails they send. And if that mouse hasn't moved in an hour, they're out of here.
So you're partly right. Companies are bad at monitoring productivity. But I don't think this is a problem predominantly of 20-person companies. I think this is a problem of 2,000-person companies.
Sure.
More. The other factor is this is not happening in isolation. This is not the only thing that work from home is not the only factor that changed. Because on the other side of this, you've got this overemployed movement of people actively trying to not do any work,
Right.
which is now creating basically a nuclear arms race to see who can get ahead. The people who don't want to do any work, and the employers that want to monitor them to make sure they are doing work, all in this like cat and mouse game of how can I have a hardware mouse jiggler that doesn't install software. So now the employer is going to use the microphone on the laptop to see if it can hear a mechanized mouse jiggler, and like it's just
really?
it's an endless fight.
Well,
If nobody's doing that, I copyright that idea, by the way.
I think that, so touching on overemployed, I don't believe that overemployed people generally try to not do work.
Yeah,
I think that
The whole point of that they try not to do work.
No, I think the whole point is to do as like, how do I phrase this without Mike exploding?
The bare minimum to not get fired.
To perform to the standard of
that was
their
my Peter
company.
Impersonation. Did I sound British?
You sounded terrible.
And you did it with an American accent.
It wasn't even a little British.
Yeah.
It's not to do the bare minimum to not get fired, because we've had a long talk about that.
Yep.
It is to do the satisfactory amount that you and the employer agreed to when you were hired, and then doubling down and adding a second or third or fourth or fifth, where you are satisfying all employers and doing your work, but you're not dedicating 60 hours or 40 hours a week. You're dedicating, let's say, 20.
No,
and
well, see,
that 20 is enough to keep them happy because you're doing everything you're supposed to.
Versus, I think sorry, Matt.
I was just going to say, versus not quiet quitters, but people who are, I forget, there was a new buzzword for this, but literally people who are like, I'm going to see how long it takes until I get fired. Like, I will do nothing.
That's so the way I see overemployment is basically employees being able to utilize their time better so that they are able to be more productive overall. Like, I've had jobs where I've been literally reading Reddit most of my day. I haven't had the choice to have another job during that time. I've done my job, and my employer has been happy with my output and my production level. But anyway, we got into overemployment here. Like this surveillance
well,
thing.
I think this gets to the point, though. And I'm glad you brought this up, both John and Peter. Because what this comes down to...
I hate it when you say that.
is the idea that if I can deliver the project in fewer hours than I'm employed for, then that's my business, and I get to use the rest of my time however I want, right?
No, you're phrasing it in a fucked up way. If I have been given 2 weeks to finish a project, but I am so efficient that I get to finish it in 2 days, now I have 12 days left to figure out what to do. What you do with that time definitely can dictate if you're a good employee or a borderline malicious employee.
Okay. Elaborate.
Well, so that you have two scenarios here. You can either wait 2 weeks to deliver the finished product and really drag it out and pretend like your project is being worked on when it's actually not being worked on. Or you can say, hey, I already finished. What else do you want me to do? That's a very important distinction.
Yeah. I'm surprised you're making that distinction.
Well, I mean, what do you mean? Because you should one isn't the former example is you actively taking advantage of your employer, and the second is you being transparent with your employer. Now it's up to your employer to say, oh, well, I don't have anything else for you right now, or go do regression tests or something.
All right.
Like,
yeah, I like it. I'm on board. I agree with that. Peter, does that accurately represent your position?
Not quite, but
well, let's hear it.
What about working from about overemployment?
Well, about abusing time like time
Oh,
efficiency and this whole article
the surveillance
monitoring
thing.
for.
Because I feel like when we've talked about this before, and this is why I'm a little surprised to hear John frame it this way now. My recollection was that the position more was, if I have X amount of work to do and I can do it in 4 hours versus 40 hours, then that's just to my benefit, and I should get those other 36 hours back to do whatever I want with.
Well, you said project, so I imagine, I don't know, like it depends on, I guess, the kind of work. Where if I'm a consultant at a company and I'm working big projects, month-long projects, but I finish them in a week instead of a month, versus I'm a task-based employee, I need to make 100 calls
Mm-hmm.
and have a 5% success rate on my calls a day. Like, one is different than the other, in my opinion, because if I'm super efficient and I've automated the calling system to where it pings me if someone answers versus going to voicemail, right? Like, so I've now cut it down to 2 hours instead of 8 hours of calling, and I keep my performance at 5% or above. So like my success rate, let's say, what should I do with the rest of the 8 hours or 6 hours? Should I do more? Should I do 500 calls because I've figured out efficiency? Should I share the automation with my employer? Should I stay quiet because I'm doing my tasks that me and my employer agreed on?
Yeah, and I think that's the Peter. What do you want to add?
I don't really want to go into my slightly different version because I want to hear what you've got to say, Mike. This is your time.
It's still on that borderline, right? If I'm completing my tasks, why do I have to put more time in? And I think you kind of touched on it with the idea of a consultant, right? We've got predominantly, we'll just kind of set aside hourly service workers because you really do have to just be putting time in to do that job. Yep. So outside of that, we kind of have two models of employment, right? We've got contract, we've got being an employee, employer-employee relationship. With the employer relationship, the benefit is you are saying, I will give you 40 hours or 60 hours or 35 hours or however many it is in exchange for a stable, predictable salary, benefits, healthcare, vacation time, all these things. And yeah, I'm essentially just going to be at your beck and call for that 40 hours in exchange for that kind of stability. On the other side, there's absolutely a model that says, if you're paying me to do a project, then it's not your business if it takes me 40 hours or 4 hours. You're going to pay me the same. That's contract work. And if that's what you're looking for, then you get paid for that project, but you also have to find your own projects, and there's no obligation for the employer to give you repeat business. You could submit a bid just like everybody else, and they can choose whatever contractor that makes sense. And I think this is where the overemployed people and some of the quiet quitting people put themselves in trouble, is because the argument comes across a lot of times as saying, well, I want to act like a contractor, but I want guaranteed job security as an employee.
Mm-hmm. So I think you're missing something, and I didn't think of it until just now when you were talking, which is an added third variable, which is your boss. So when I start a new job, one of the first things I say once I'm onboarded and ramped is, what are the core hours that you want me to work in? I've gotten this answer twice in a row now. And the answer is, I want you to do your work and complete it. I don't care when you do it. If there are meetings you need to be in them. That's it. The time element has been removed because I'm great at choosing employers. The time element has been completely removed, and it says, if you meet our criteria of work complete, you can do it at 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. And as long as you meet your hard time obligations, meetings, and deadlines, I don't give a shit what you do. Make me look good. You do good work, and we're all winners. And that, I think, is a really important distinction, because then we have 1,700% increase in Google searches about how to monitor the time your employees spend with butts on chairs. That is the wrong approach. I don't care if you sit for 8 hours or if you sit for 3 hours. If you're delivering results and you're a value to the company, that's really all that matters. Yeah.
I think the problem is that results-based performance monitoring is harder than just time tracking and task tracking.
For sure. But that's a failure on management and leadership.
Right, but I think that's also why Mike's correct when he says that it's more a big company problem than a small company problem. Because when you're a smaller company, it's easier to say, hey, I've got this project, can you do it? And then evaluate the output of the project and go, that's great, that's what I wanted, I'm happy with that. But when you have 10,000 employees, doing that for each individual person's output is harder. It becomes a scale issue and it's more difficult to track. I think that's part of the problem anyway. But what I would have said earlier, by the way, is if my employer is happy with my work, what does it matter what I do? Well, I mean,
Agreed.
All the other factors don't matter. What I look like, what I do with my other time, what gender I am, anything. If they're happy with what I'm doing for them and they're paying me for it, that's all that should matter. And that's why I don't have a problem with quiet quitting. I don't have a problem with overemployment. I don't have a problem with anything else. And I should be happy with how they're treating me as well. That's how that's naive, right? That's idealistic, and it never actually is like that.
I mean, that's a honeymoon
But I
phase
think that's all that should really matter.
Yeah, I don't know if that never happens, but I think the nature of the work and the company have a huge amount to do with that. And the bigger the company, the more likely you're going to run into these kinds of problems.
Now, I'm not saying that there's some toxic quiet quitters who aren't actually quiet quitters. They're more like malicious insiders who get employed and their main goal is to do nothing and last for as long as possible with mouse jigglers and emails and busy work, busy looks, while actually accomplishing nothing and then jumping off into the next ship as soon as they get fired. Versus toxic, malicious, overemployed people who also will take up as many jobs as they can and do as little as possible while simultaneously, again, busy work, looking like they're there, mouse jigglers, emails, whatever, and really taking advantage of a system. And that is now, I believe, actually going to, these types of employees are going to affect the rest of the people who are like, well, I'm doing what I'm supposed to, but I'm still being monitored. I'm still being yelled at for 100%. Taking a walk, Yeah.
And personally, I don't actually know what a mouse jiggler is. Is that the right word? Mouse jiggler? I don't know. I don't know what that is or what that does. So mouse I'll just take your word for it.
Where a mouse will work on the side to
they're turning tricks on the corner. That's right.
That's what I would have assumed.
Like
but
a little ratatouille.
I feel like your position has evolved on this, John.
How so?
Do you think I'm imagining that? Would you say that you've been consistent about this?
I think his communication has evolved.
I think my communication's gotten better.
Okay.
I just think that I got a little bit too defensive last time we spoke about it because I believe I said something along the lines of...
No, you didn't. No, he didn't. You didn't. You fucking didn't, John. You did not. Okay?
Caught me so off guard.
Is Peter having
I said something,
duck flashback or some PTSD?
Okay. Have bread. Here's the bread. Here's all the bread I have.
Just wouldn't stop coming.
I think I said something along the lines of, if you've agreed to work 32 hours and you work 32 hours, but not an hour more, because the conversation was a little bit different a few months ago. We talked about, it was quiet quitting specifically.
The overtime and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And the bare minimum. And I said that if you're meeting the criteria of the employer, but you're not exceeding it, that shouldn't be a bad thing. Yeah. And then we concluded with that I had a different definition to bare minimum than you.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, but I talked to a guy once who's like, oh, if you're doing phenomenal work in just as little as like 45 hours, no one's going to say anything to you. Like, oh, really?
Oh, sick. Thanks, dude.
I know. How gracious of you.
Well, one thing that crossed my mind, by the way, about this, and it's something that a trap I've fallen into quite a lot, is when the first thing that crossed my mind when you read out the first paragraph in the article, which was about imagine a world where everything is tracked and this is happening and this, looking at how many emails you sent. That is the world for a lot of people. And the first thing that happens is that people start to game the system. As soon as they find out what it is that's being tracked, and what metrics are being, produced, you start to do more tickets. You get your 20 tickets done a day. You send 15 more emails a day just to meet a quota, just to look busy. And it sucks. It's a false economy,
Yeah, I think we talked about that on something to do with Slack and appearing busy by making more public posts than you might normally. The last thing I wanted to say, though, about I had mentioned, we talked about it last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, why businesses don't advocate for socialized medicine more in the US, because it seems like a no-brainer to me that health insurance is one of the biggest expenses for businesses. So if they could offload that to the government, like that seems like a total win-win. But in thinking through this idea of like employment versus contractor work, I kind of realized that health insurance is a reason why you couldn't leave a job. So it's to the employee, it's to the company's advantage to be able to hold that over your head because it reduces your mobility.
Such a horrible American thing. It just makes
it costs what, $5,000 extra for an employer to cover you? Probably less because they get jumbo packages.
I was just thinking there hasn't been enough anger in this episode. We were promised some anger. And I just want to say that system in America is fucked up. The fact that you have to stay at a company to get health insurance goes against all sense of decency. Like, how can an entire country, 300 million people, allow that to exist?
Sorry, have you heard about our gun control problem, Peter?
Oh, yeah, there is that.
Oh, homelessness, incarceration rates.
All right.
What else was there?
Yeah.
Like, that's the worst thing? Maybe. It's probably top 5.
Definitely top 5.
It's crazy, though. It just,
Yeah. All right.
Anyway.
Well, I think we're getting there. Tomorrow will be fun, too. Tomorrow may be a little outrage, but it's just going to be, I think, more fun tomorrow. So come watch that one. But this was fun. It was a good conversation, John.
It was a good convo.
I'm glad we were to have this heart to heart.
Yeah, guys. Thanks.
Oh, and thank you, Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Peter.